Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my weekly show where my guests and I play some movie roulette with my enormous movie watch list and randomly pick a film. And hopefully, by the end of this episode, you have a film to go check out. Could be literally anything. And we just so happen to land on a Best Picture winner. And joining me is my good friend Corey. Corey, thank you so much for coming on.
Shane, thanks for having me, man. Glad to be back with you.
And now you get to hear the voices of Red Eye, Wasteland, Connection. So there you go.
Yes, yes.
Each month you get to see Corey's awesome visuals for our reviews, and now you can listen
Thank
to
you.
us. So there you go. Now, we're going to be talking about Grand Hotel, released April 12th, 1932. This 112-minute film had a budget of $750,000 and made a box office of $2.6 million. So it made
Wow.
some money back in 1932. Directed by Edmund Golding, based on a 1930 play by William A. Drake, based on a 1929 novel by Vicky Baum. Starring Greta Garbo, John Barrymore, Joan Crawford, and Lionel Barrymore.
The
Two
Barrymore
Barrymore,
boys.
the Barrymore board. Two Barrymore, two Furious. We have here at the Grand Hotel. This
Love it.
won Best Picture, but it was not nominated for anything else at that Oscars.
That's wild.
And that is the only occurrence that's ever happened at the Oscars was that Best Picture won nothing else. And I think what was a couple of years ago when Coda won, it was one of the least nominated
Hmm.
films ever to win Best Picture. I think it
Right.
only had like three nominations or maybe
Something like
even
that.
two.
Yeah.
But no, not this one. This had one, and it was one for one, so they had a big winning percentage. But like, it kind of boggles my mind that you had two Barrymores, Joan Crawford and Greta Garbo, and none of them got nominated for
For
acting.
sure, right? So
But
crazy.
we weren't there, and we were not at the Academy, so we don't know what they were thinking. This was remade a couple times, once in 1945, Weekend at the Waldorf, and 1959 as Mention in Hotel. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the original like name of this play.
Hmm.
Turned into a 1989 Tony Award winning musical. Has the famous quote, "I want to be alone." Feel like a lot of people have that vibe. Um, in 2007, selected for preservation by National Film Registry in the Library of Congress. Rights
Mm.
were originally bought for $13,000. I think they did well on their investment.
Oh yeah.
So there was some controversy about Garbo, a Swedish actor cast as a Russian. Um, that's certainly
Must
not
have
the
been of the
most
times, I guess.
controversial.
Yeah.
Well, like, and that's not even the most controversial. Like, in an era where white people were playing black people all the time.
Oh yeah.
But at least this was even still before John Wayne played Genghis Khan. Because that actually happened. Um, Now, the circular desk and 360 perspective changed filmmaking forever. So, this was actually a pretty influential film in how films were shot
Hmm.
because of that desk at the hotel. And I definitely want to talk about that because that's some of the most interesting, like, filmmaking elements of this film. And then, first film featuring the Barrymore brothers together.
Hmm.
And, years and years later, those Barrymores are still in show business, even to the point where I just watched the other night the Tom the this is the Tom Green documentary,
Hmm.
directed by Tom Green, and obviously talked about his marriage to Drew
Right.
Barrymore and actually how they reconnected on Drew Barrymore's show 18 years after they had even been in contact with each other.
Wow.
So yeah, Drew Barrymore is carrying that torch
Yeah,
of
she
the
is.
Barrymore clan like generations later. So good for them. But Corey, what were your general thoughts on Grand Hotel?
So a lot of I didn't know that it was kind of remade so many times and had all kind of those other aspects to it. So that's cool to find out about. And like you were saying, I did my damnedest to look into exactly like you were talking about with how it won the Academy Award, and it was one for one. But I was like, okay, so what was it against? But if I read correctly, like back then they didn't really do it that way, which really kind of boggled my mind that there wasn't like nominations. They just did it. I wasn't aware of that. So that was crazy to me that it was just like, this one for sure is gonna do it. So I found that really cool. And then of course I looked and I just gotta throw this in there. I'm like, well, what else maybe was coming out at that time? And the movie Freaks was coming out, the old kind of like horror slideshow movie.
Interesting.
That's a
I am
fun one.
sure that won a bunch of Oscars.
uh, but to this, I think we could talk a lot about obviously because the main idea of this movie is just all these people and how they kind of interweave into each other's lives. And I think the big standout for me, of course, was Crawford. I think she was,
Mhm.
for me at least, was just her vibe and everything that she put to it was really well done. I think I really like the opening with the credits and you learn who is who. A
Mhm.
nice little callback to an episode that we did of Royal Tenenbaums. So for
Yeah,
those listening, if you haven't gone to YouTube, please check out that episode. That's a good one
absolutely.
there. But beyond that, also then just some of the dialogue. I really liked how early on with Crawford and Barrymore when they first met and they were,
Mhm.
on the balcony and just talking and stuff like that. Just the banter between them just felt. I just something about that I really love. Just that type of writing back then. I don't know. It doesn't feel as it is now. And
Mhm.
some of the lines, there was one where he was like, I forget the line exactly, but paraphrasing. If I maybe I have it wrong, but it was um, that one dictation for me. And I was like, hey, yo, hey, bud. There was like, what are you, little innuendo there. But I thought that was a lot of fun, their banter. And then just overall, just the emotional weight of a lot of things. It's obviously everything's coming together in this one place. And you start to learn everybody's kind of backstories a little bit and what they're really
Yeah.
trying to do and how they kind of come and go. But then it kind of gets a little deeper, and probably something that we'll talk about more is really Barrymore's character. And I was at the end of it, I was kind of just thinking, I was like, man, this guy kind of he had an impact on everybody in this movie in
Mhm.
some way, shape, or form. And I don't think it goes too heavy into that idea. But it's definitely there. So there's a lot of things that it just kind of hints at least through context, which I thought was really well done. Um, but then just again the idea of it felt different. I mean, you're looking at it maybe of the time, and that was something that I really was trying to do, especially with a lot of these episodes that we do. Is I mean, we're reviewing some pretty older movies, and I'm like, so what was the mentality back then and stuff like that. And I think, like you were saying, with like some of the camera work around the desk and things like that, I think that plays a huge piece in this, and definitely we could talk more about that. But overall, I think there's had its moments, had its downs, had its lulls in some places for me where the pacing just felt a little funky, but I enjoyed myself with it.
Well, and especially for a film that's like what? This is almost
Old.
2 hours.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
this, yeah,
Yeah,
this
this
is
is
like
too.
this is like a 2 hour movie. And
Yeah,
even if like you look up the like the summary on Wikipedia of what happens in the movie,
right.
there doesn't look like there's 2 hours worth of
No.
what happens. And it is like a talky kind of experience. It is like, and even to quote the film, Dr. Otenschlag's Grand Hotel, always the same. People come, people go, nothing ever happens.
Yep.
And I think that's such a fascinating kind of perspective of any kind of story that happens at like a hotel, an airport, a train station, where it's like, this is a fixture.
Yeah.
People come, people go. And what really makes an impact on the place?
Hmm.
Not many singular people or experiences or things that happened here. Like, obviously, what happened to these characters here has such a big impact on them.
Yeah.
And to your point, this one character made such a ripple effect on all these characters. But then you have the Grand Hotel that stands tall, and you know what? Tragedy happens, and it keeps moving on.
Yeah. Ugh,
And
bleak.
yeah, but what's interesting is because of the technical aspects, it really brings this hotel to life in
Hmm.
terms of like this desk checking people in and how it's moving and stuff like that. It feels like we're with the hotel.
Hmm.
And people come and go, people will come and go, people might never leave alive.
Mm.
See, that sounds like a
Dun
horror
dun
film.
dun.
But like in this situation, it has that feeling of like, yeah, stuff's gonna happen. And tragic things happen, romance happens. There's a lot of things that like it's all mostly behind closed doors, but there's
Hmm.
probably so many different things happening at a hotel.
Right.
And most people don't know because that is behind closed doors. It's that kind of place where you can go to a place and experience something in an isolated instance. And unless you're like screaming at the top of your lungs, the people next door are not gonna have any idea what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah, right. I I think to that talking maybe I think this comes from just like the time and the era,
Yeah.
like because I found myself kind of drifting and thinking about the hotel and just I'm like, damn, these people don't leave this hotel. Like they're
Yeah.
when they check into the hotel, that's where they hang out. They're there. They're mingling at the hotel. They're doing stuff at the hotel. And I'm like, geez, like I don't think I've ever spent this much time at a hotel that I checked into. So that was an interesting concept to me a little bit, just how much in this hotel that they're just there, which was a lot of fun. Obviously, probably just played to the story being told, but
Mhm.
nonetheless.
Well, and even with this specifically, like I don't travel much. But I'm going to be sent, as of now, sent by my work to go to Florida in October for a conference. And
Heck
this is
yeah.
at a swanky place.
Shane's going
Um,
to Key West.
I wish going to Orlando. Uh, like this place, I've been to this hotel the last time I went 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There's no reason you need to leave this place.
See,
Like,
maybe that's why. It's like I stay at these dingy Motel Sixes, so I need to go to some
and
like
it's like, yeah, you
luxury.
don't want to hang out here. But like the Grand Hotel is the kind of place where they have all the amenities you'll ever want, and why would you want to leave?
Exactly.
And it's interesting because this is a story of the people in a place like this
Hmm.
that may never have ever connected, or for better or for worse, whether
Right.
it's they connected through love or conflict, and how like people's lives were changed
Right.
because of this period of time at Grand Hotel. And I feel like I love that idea in a film because I love the Grand Budapest Hotel so much. And
My brain
like
was going there a lot.
Wes Anderson really crafts like this was something special.
Hmm.
Like Gustav H was going to take care of you, especially if you were an older woman. Uh, because and like even this film has, like you mentioned, has this cheekiness. Like we have Baron Tiger and oh, you're a little stenographist. And Blancham, yes, I'm a little stenographist. And he's like, fascinating. I don't suppose you'd take some dictation from me sometime, would
See,
you?
that was perfect.
And
I
it's
was
just
like,
like,
dang.
and it's just like, sir, you gandered. Uh for sure.
And I think to that, like maybe we could go into this a little bit, or you can pull me back. But just kind of that romantic element, I felt so much more of the connection between Barrymore Baron and Flem than I did with his connection to Crawford. So much, I felt like that was so just sprung on you and just like this is what's going to happen. That it just didn't. I could not grasp onto it. It just felt so weird to me.
Well, and it's interesting for like a film that is 2 hours, and like this is nowhere near the kind of ensemble you'd probably get in a film like this today. Like
Hmm.
this is in a like a Robert Altman film where there's like 20 different named characters that you're trying to keep track of.
Yeah.
Because like there films like Gosford Park and stuff like that definitely have some kind of vibe of what Grand Hotel's laying down here. But
Right.
like it's like four main characters. Like you could have fleshed out some of these relationships a little bit.
Exactly.
It's old school Hollywood, and basically, and to quote Spider-Man, specifically his landlord, "You're a good woman, I'm good man." And like that's the key to any romance, except in old Hollywood, it's like you are attractive woman, I'm attractive man.
I know it's like don't in this instance, don't kill yourself. I'm here.
Yes. Well, and it's so interesting how these people come into their lives, and like there's something about old films that have no shame in tackling certain taboo things
Right.
or just like strange things. Like I'm always surprised watching screwball comedies or rom-coms from this era. Like, what's the setup to this movie? Because like they're so absurd. And
Yeah.
like you have robber and person commit suicide and then bada boom.
Boom.
And it's just like match made in heaven. It's just like, what are you doing in here? Saving you.
Yeah.
And it's just like this is how this is gonna happen. And, and that's so fascinating about watching these older films because like I feel like what modern romances have lost is that they have gotten so comfortable giving you the same damn thing over and over and
Hmm.
over again. It's the hallmark formula
Right.
of successful woman goes to plays and then salt of the earth guy breaks down her barriers. They hate each other at first, and then they fall in love with each other. No, this is some weird ass stuff. Like this is a crazy setup. Like this is weird, but it's interesting.
Right.
And
It
like
works a little. Yeah.
it doesn't go like some of these don't go as in depth, but at least they have interesting ways that these characters are coming into each other's lives.
Right.
And I'll take that. Take something interesting over something that's like I've seen this 50 million times at this point. Like, is it kind of absurd that this is how these two people came together? Yeah, sure, but life's weird.
Right.
So we'll take it. But I am legitimately surprised that this movie didn't get any acting attention. Like I
Right?
know back then, like looking at the Oscars website, a lot of the categories back then only had three nominees. So like these were like tight, small
Yeah.
categories. So like if there were like five nominees for acting, maybe this would have gotten some other nominations. But like looking at the best actor that year, Wallace Berry and Frederick March co-won.
Uh,
And there's only three nominees. So two out of three of them won. So
they're
like
just pulling names out of a hat at that point.
and like I'm to be honest, I haven't heard of many of these films
Yeah.
that like I've known Friedrich March is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I have seen that. I've seen Aerosmith because not that kind of
Not that
Aerosmith,
era.
like as an arrow you shoot and then Smith. That was a John Ford film. So I
Oh,
obviously watched it because
oh no.
I've watched them all.
Shane will not get away from John Ford.
And what's crazy is a lot of the like it's a lot of like it's only a
Yeah.
handful of films that got a bunch of nominations. But like Best Picture, Grand Hotel beat Aerosmith, Bad Girl the Champ, five-star final, 1 hour with you, Shanghai Express, and The Smiling Lieutenant. Now think about like I had heard of Grand Hotel before.
Hmm.
I have watched Aerosmith because of my John Ford series. I've heard of The Champ and Shanghai Express, but like, how many of these films are still like known and watched?
Right.
Literally, this is closing in on 100 years. ago
That's
at this
crazy.
point. But I think it's interesting
Yeah.
that this is a very different kind of era, but like it definitely seems like the kind of film that would get Oscar attention.
Hmm.
And so like it makes sense like this one best picture, but I'm just still surprised that it didn't get more acting
Hmm.
praise because like the Barrymores are both very talented actors.
Hmm.
And obviously Lionel Barrymore brings a very different kind of vibe. Uh
Into this one, yeah.
yeah. And but like you have like Greta Garbo and Joan Crawford in this movie, and none of them got nominated. So
Right.
I'm a little surprised. And like I thought they all did a nice job of bringing their characters to life. I think this is an interesting and enjoyable film that I think kind of feels fresh today because it doesn't do the same formula that a lot of
Absolutely.
romances today do, which seems so odd that a film almost 100 years old feels fresher than movies that come out now. But, it was a different time then. They're
Yeah.
like, I feel like, right, like people were like sitting in they're drank half a bottle of whiskey at that point, and they probably smoked 10 cigarettes that day already. And they're
Right.
just like, you know what would
And
be
it's 1
funny?
p.m.
It's 1 p.m. Like, you know what? You know what'd be crazy? And they came up with the weirdest stuff.
I
But
love it.
I'm glad that I watched this.
Hmm.
And it does give some context. So, like, there's some really interesting filmmaking that got injected in here because, like, this didn't have to be that kind of movie. This
Hmm.
could have just been a film that really rode high on some big names and enjoyed that. But
Right.
it was an interesting experience for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I there was as you were talking about the like the technical aspect of it, there was one early shot on where they come off the elevator early on and they're kind of going to the rooms and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
you get Flem kind of just hanging out by the banister and Barrymore the Baron comes up and there's like this like aerial shot just down all those levels and I just thought that was a
Mhm.
really awesome establishing shot and again, back to the kind of the character idea, I think there was that really early scene where like they're just kind of running through all these quick edits of them on phone calls, and
Yeah.
you're just learning about them. I thought that was a cool idea, um, especially I mean, like you said, almost 100 years ago, and they're using something like that to establish background and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool, really well
Well,
done.
and as a film, I feel like you need to find interesting ways to dump exposition,
Yeah,
or it's just going to be really
yeah.
and that was a clever and interesting way of doing that. And, you know, that was probably wasn't, and this is still what, 5 years into sound.
Hmm.
So, like, this was still relatively early in like the sound era of film. And, like, can you imagine how clunky that would be in the silent era? Somebody sitting on a phone and then card.
Yeah.
And then, like, but like being able to leverage that in this era now that you do have that ability. So yeah, I think this film is interesting enough from a filmmaking standpoint, has some really strong performances, interesting characters, nice mustaches.
Mhm.
But yeah, and you can't discount that. That goes a
No,
long way.
it does.
It is literally an acting Oscar category. Hairstyling and makeup. I would totally like want to try to like campaign for a best facial hair Oscar.
That'd be
I think
awesome.
that I think that would be a fun time. That would have my vote. Before you get stunts or casting Oscar or like motion capture voice performance Oscar, we need to get that Oscar for best facial hair, which would totally go to Nosferatu for this year because
I was my brain was
that's
just
Dash
Orlok.
though. Because that was like a this era, like somebody from like this era would have a mustache like that.
Yeah,
But I guess
love
Corey,
it.
was there anything else that you wanted to bring up about Grand Hotel?
I think the only final thing, I think this is just one of those instances where I'm just like looking too deep into something, but it stood out to me again, like the line you said where it's like people come, people go, the hotel kind of stays the same. But there was one where towards the end of the movie, Flem and Lionel Barrymore's character, they're heading out, and he's like, "Oh, have my I can't even remember, was it mail or something like that directed to the Grand Hotel in Paris?" And she's like, "How do you know there's a Grand Hotel there?" And the line was, "There's a Grand Hotel everywhere in the world." And I just thought that line, that there's a Grand Hotel everywhere in the world, was really fitting, and it made me think a little bit more, like, just you can really go deep into it, but like, okay, this is this place where these people come to, and just that idea, it's all over the place. So it's not just this one area or this one instance of it. Like, this is happening everywhere all the time, kind of a thing. So
Mhm.
I thought that was really cool.
Well, and it's that kind of feel like if it's an important place,
Right.
it has a grand hotel there.
Yeah.
And like it's
Ooh.
so interesting because this idea still lives on in pop culture today. Because think about the Grand Budapest Hotel with the whole the what Society of the Crossed Keys.
Yeah.
And like was that scene necessary? No, but it was great.
It was
And
awesome.
speaking of facial hair, but like Bill
Yes.
Murray like calls and like Bob Balaban and like all the Fisher Stevens and all these different guys picking up and whatever.
Yeah.
Wally Wolodarski, each of those characters, and that idea that they have all these hotels in like all the biggest, most beautiful cities. You have John Wick. There's a content. If a city matters, there's a continental.
There you go.
And that was one of the coolest things, was going to the different continentals. Like John Wick Chapter 2 delivering the Rome Continental.
Oh yeah.
And then, oh my God, in the fourth one in Japan,
I haven't
the
seen that one yet.
the whole first act of the movie, like the first hour, is at the one of the continentals in Osaka, I think it was. And it was the coolest thing. But it's that idea.
Yeah.
And lastly, this is like a precursor to White Lotus.
Yeah, I could see that. It
Because like,
makes you wonder, like you were saying, like, did Wes Anderson maybe like really kind of lean into this film a little bit when he was writing Grand Budapest? Or like you were saying, did Mike White utilize
yeah,
this a little bit and stuff like that? Yeah, that's awesome.
because it's like it's all the different, all your different White Lotuses and who comes
Mm,
to these different hotels and stuff like that and what's going on.
I
So,
love it.
but yeah, it's an interesting film, and I don't know if they turned this into a series, but they totally could have, like, had like each of these different grand hotels places and all the crazy stuff that happens at each
Oh
of them.
yeah, man.
But that is our discussion on Grand Hotel from 1932, Best Picture winner. Corey, thank you so much for coming on, as always, and talking movies with me.
It's always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me, Shane.
And thank all of you for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What's your favorite hotel from like a movie? Is it done? Johnson Checks In. I definitely watched that a lot when I was a
I
kid.
love that.
Or Home Alone 2,
I was thinking Home Alone. Ooh, ooh.
Tim Curry. Um, and there was a
Oh,
president in it.
mm, yeah.
Yeah. But make sure to follow or subscribe if you listen to your podcast. We have a lot of new shows coming your way on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network. So a lot of new things to check out. If you really like Tolkien, Tolkien's on tap now. And we'll be having there's a new music show that we have going on and some new film ones. So it won't just be me and my like 5 movie podcasts. So, and if you like our logo, go check out HiFlyer Creative for all of your digital marketing needs. But most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network.